This all started because I asked too many questions. I've always been the kind of person who wants to know how things work. Machines, systems, especially anything involving money. I was fascinated by the simplicity of mechanisms that most people never even think about. The slots in Vegas, vending machines, ATMs. I think you get the picture. One day, I was talking with someone who understood a bit about those systems, and he explained how coin-operated machines worked. The machine checks the coin's size, weight, sometimes even its magnetic properties. Pretty simple tech, but still clever. That little explanation stuck with me far longer than it should have. Then I got curious. What about bills? The newer machines at the time had just started accepting paper money. How do they verify what's real? So I asked, and instead of an explanation, the guy just said, that's information they don't really like to give out, because if you knew, you could probably fool them. That was it for me. That was the spark that I needed. I wasn't thinking about fraud or scamming anyone. It felt more like a puzzle. Like, could I make a machine think it had just been handed a real bill? Only once, just to see if I could pull it off. And like the idiot that I was at the age of 20, I decided to try. This was around the year 2000, so YouTube didn't exist yet, and how-to guides on this type of thing weren't out there. I had to figure it out myself, so I started experimenting. For what it's worth, I'm from Canada, but I think all of our terminology surrounding money is pretty much the same. I went to the bank one afternoon, withdrew a handful of bills of all amounts, a couple fives, a few tens, and a 20. I studied them closely, and the first thing that I noticed was that each denomination was a slightly different size. That felt not only intentional, but important. I had an old flatbed scanner, as well as a crusty inkjet printer. Nothing fancy, but I scanned both sides of the bills, flipped the paper around, and printed the images back to back. Then I carefully glued the sides together and trimmed the paper down to match the exact size of the real thing. My God, they looked awful, like embarrassingly bad. The paper was wrong, the ink was low quality, the colors bled slightly, and everything else was just a bit off. You could never hand one to a person and expect them to think it was the real thing. But machines? I was hoping that was a different story. So one night, I drove to an automated car wash that had a change machine mounted on the wall. I figured if this thing spat out my fake bill, no harm done. If it accepted it, well, I'd deal with that when the time came. I fed in the fake $5 bill. Rejected. I figured as much. But then I noticed that the corner was bent. So I straightened it out, flipped it around, and tried again. 20 quarters dropped into the tray. I just stood there, stunned. At that point, I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out from behind the vacuums and slap cuffs on me. But there was no one there. Just me and a machine that had just given me $5 for a piece of glued together printer paper. My heart was now pounding. I tried the 10. 40 quarters. It worked yet again. I grabbed the coins and drove home like I just robbed a casino. Once I was back at my place, I dumped the quarters out onto my desk and just stared at them. It was real. I tricked a machine using bills that looked like they'd been made in an elementary school art class. And of course, I couldn't stop there. I made another set and went to a different car wash across town. I tried the 10, same result, 40 quarters. Then I gave the $20 bill a shot. No luck. I took it out, straightened it, tried again. Same thing, no dice. Okay, so what I learned is that the 5s and the 10s worked just fine. The 20 was a bust. No need to make any more of those. Now, this is the point where any cautious person likely would have stopped. Looking back, I should have just called it quits, laughed about the whole thing, and moved on. But instead, I made what could have been the worst decision possible. I told a friend. I still remember his face when I told him. His eyes lit up. "You're serious? This works." I just nodded. And almost instantaneously, we were now partners in crime. We started mapping out where we could go. Laundromats, sketchy car washes, anywhere with old machines that looked like they hadn't been updated in a decade. We did make rules though. No hitting the same place twice in a week. Always wear a hat. Don't draw attention. And above all else, never talk about this in public. We made batches of fake bills at night like it was some arts and crafts project from hell. We stored them in a shoebox under my bed. They looked no better than the originals. Cheap printer paper, glue streaks, shoddy alignment. But they just kept working. Week after week, we hit machines all over the area. At one point, we had more quarters than we knew what to do with. I had jars of them under my sink. He stashed them in empty coffee cans in his mom's garage. We must have racked up over $4,000 worth of quarters. Probably more. We got creative too. Feeding the coins into vending machines, then selling the snacks on our campus. Buying tokens at arcades and cashing them back out. Little tricks to turn all that loose change into spendable cash. What others may call laundering in a sense. But with each success, my anxiety only grew. One night after a run that hit 3 different machines in a single evening, I was driving home with a cup holder full of quarters, as well as a few fake bills still in my glove box. Then I passed a parked police cruiser near a strip mall, and I felt like I was going to puke. The thing is, the cop car didn't even move, but I had to pull over down the block just to catch my breath. My heart was hammering inside of my chest. That was actually my wake-up call. The next morning, I looked around my place. There were coins absolutely everywhere. That shoebox still full of fake bills under my bed. And I just thought, what the hell am I doing? This was never supposed to go this far. I wasn't a criminal. I wasn't even good at this. And I knew that I wasn't cut out for it. The only reason I hadn't been caught yet was sheer dumb luck. I called my friend and told him I was out. He pushed back at first, said we'd been careful, that we hadn't done anything wrong to anyone. But I knew better. Neither of us were masterminds. We were just 2 idiots getting lucky. I shredded the remaining fake bills, took the quarters, and slowly spent them over the next few years. I paid in change at places where I could. I fed them into random Coinstar machines. Any homeless person I came across, they were getting handfuls. Anything that I could do to get rid of the evidence. To this day, I still don't fully understand why those machines accepted the bills in the first place. Maybe it really was just about the size. Maybe the tech was outdated garbage. I guess it's also possible that no one ever expected someone dumb enough to try it with glue and a desktop printer. I don't know, but what I do know is I got away with it, somehow. No fines, no arrests, just a few $1,000s in coins, and a knot of guilt in my stomach that took way too long to untangle. Now, I've got a regular job, a family, and a completely normal, non-fraudulent life. But every once in a while, I'll hear the sound of quarters dropping into a tray, and just for a split second, I'll remember that time that I fooled the entire system. Still thankful that I didn't completely screw my life up over a pocket full of change. I never thought I'd be the kind of father who'd call CPS on his own daughter, and yet, here I am. She's 15, just a kid herself, and now she's facing the possibility of losing custody of her 2-month-old son, my grandson, and I'm the one who made the call. When she first told us she was pregnant, I was blindsided. I didn't handle it well. In fact, I handled it terribly. I told her flat out that she had 3 choices: abortion, adoption, or raising the baby entirely on her own. I wasn't going to sugarcoat it. I told her I would not financially support the baby, and I meant it. This wasn't said out of cruelty, but because my wife and I literally couldn't. My wife hasn't worked in over a decade due to a disability. Her check barely makes a dent in our monthly bills. I work long hours, and we'd just sold our car and downsized our home to make ends meet. We were already stretched thin, and the idea of raising a newborn in that situation, it just wasn't realistic. I was scared out of my mind. For her, for us, for this upcoming baby. But my daughter insisted she was going to keep the baby. She said she could do it. While I didn't see this as ideal, we didn't abandon her. My wife made sure she had proper prenatal care throughout the pregnancy. She had access to doctors, to appointments, to everything she needed. We did our part to support her through that stage of it. But she was clearly and rightfully overwhelmed, and it showed. 5 months into her pregnancy, the baby's father, her boyfriend, vanished on her. He moved out of state to live with relatives and didn't even have the decency to tell her. She found out from a Facebook post. Then, one by one, all of his family members blocked her. So at that point, it was just us three in a too small house, trying our best to keep our heads above water. I held firm on what I'd said before. I told her I'd be a grandfather, but not a stand-in parent. That meant that if she couldn't provide, I would have to step in, and not in the way that she'd want. Once the baby arrived, and the hospital stay was done, and the settling in commenced, my daughter didn't go back to school. She dropped out. She took a part-time job, but didn't pursue her GED, even when I offered to cover the cost of the classes and the test. She said it was too much, too overwhelming. Meanwhile, she just seemed to assume that my wife would be her live-in babysitter whenever she needed to work or rest. From there, though, it only seemed to get worse. Feedings were missed, sometimes because my daughter would forget, sometimes because she slept through them. She let her supply dip from not pumping, and then ignored it until she developed mastitis. She changed diapers infrequently, not because she was trying to be neglectful, but because she was trying to make a single pack last as long as she could. Money was tight, but it was the baby who suffered. My wife and I did what we could behind the scenes. We started using formula. We made sure he was gaining weight. We bought more diapers when we realized what was happening. We filled in the gaps, but those gaps kept growing. And no matter how much we tried to prop things up, we couldn't keep pretending she was managing on her own. She wasn't. She was neck deep, and at times she even seemed checked out. And though I never questioned her love for her son, she wasn't caring for him the way a child needs to be cared for. It wasn't intentional abuse, but it was neglect, constant and dangerous. I had told her what would happen. I had warned her that if she couldn't provide, couldn't step up, I'd call Child Protective Services. And I did just that. Not because I'm angry, not because I want to punish her, but because there's a 2-month-old baby who didn't ask to be born into this. One who deserves better than a 15-year-old who can't meet his basic needs, no matter how much she loves him. My wife backed me. She understood. But my daughter, she hates me now. She sees this as betrayal, and if I'm meeting her halfway, it just might be. There's a case open now. CPS has been coming to the house, and while they're still evaluating, from what I've heard, they're close to recommending removal. My daughter could lose custody. She might lose her son. And I'm the one who set it all into motion. It hurts like hell, but I stand by it. It's the kind of choice you hope you'll never have to make as a parent, protecting one child by hurting another. And that's what this feels like. Like I'm ripping apart the only support system my daughter has left. Like I'm confirming to her that no one believes in her. But the truth is, I do believe in her. I believe she can grow, that one day she can be the kind of mother she wants to be. But right now, she isn't. She can't be. She's a child with a child, and love just isn't enough. I know people might judge me, say I failed as a parent long before this happened. And maybe I did. I didn't catch things early enough. I didn't push hard enough for her to take her GED. Maybe I should have stepped in sooner or differently. But I've never let that baby suffer. Not once. And I didn't leave my daughter to flounder either. We made sure she had medical care. We supported her through the pregnancy. We tried to help her to adjust to this life that she chose, but there comes a point where tough love isn't enough. And someone has to act in the interest of the child who can't speak for themselves. So I made that call, and now I live with it. I'm not proud. I'm not looking for applause. I'm just trying to be honest. It's easy to say what you would do until it's your daughter on the line. Until you're the one holding your grandson at night because his mother is asleep again and hasn't fed him in hours. Until you're the one counting diapers and watching a child try to parent another child. This isn't the life I wanted for her, and it's not the start I wanted for him. But I couldn't keep pretending it was okay. I couldn't keep covering for her until something irreversible happened. And so now I wait, guilty, heartbroken, and still wondering whether I did the right thing. Because I didn't just call CPS on a stranger. I called them on my little girl. And no matter what happens next, I know that's something that neither of us will ever forget. I did something that I can't undo. And even though it came from a place of curiosity, even concern, I know now that I crossed a line. I learned something about my mom's past, something unimaginable. And the way I learned it feels like I stole something from her. I'm a 25-year-old female, and my mom and I have always been close. Not in that overbearing best friend kind of way, but close in the way that I could call her crying at 3 a.m. because I know she'd answer on that second ring. She's the kind of person who remembers the Starbucks barista's name after a single visit. She's warm, funny, the type of person who assumes good in others until they absolutely prove otherwise. And honestly, she makes it easy to forget that she's a person with her own shadows, a history that she didn't tell us about when we were young. Last month, I was at my parents' house helping my mom with some of her spring cleaning. Simple stuff, really. I was sorting through a bin of random paperwork when I noticed a single page sticking out from a folder. It wasn't even fully visible, just the corner of it. But it was the end of the title that caught my eye. Something ending in, "as a rape survivor." I hesitated when I read that. I knew that this likely wasn't meant for my eyes. Every instinct told me to close the folder and just move on. But my curiosity won out, and I hate myself for that. There was a moment where I justified it. I told myself I needed to know, that maybe it was about someone else, that maybe this was something we were all supposed to see eventually. I even convinced myself that whatever it was, it couldn't be that bad. I mean, this was my mom. She's always been strong, bright, resilient. We knew she drank like a fish in college, had 1,000 friends, and always had a date for every formal. If something had happened to her, surely we would have known. She would have told us. And besides, I thought, how bad could it be? Probably one of those gray area stories. A situation blurred by time and changing social norms. Something messy, but survivable. Something that I could file away in my brain under uncomfortable, but not earth-shattering. So I opened up the folder, and then I read, and everything inside of me seemed to fall about 50 feet. This wasn't some story with softened edges. It wasn't a college hookup that she regretted, or a night gone wrong at a party. It was the kind of thing that some people just don't survive. It was exactly the kind of assault you imagine when someone says the word rape out loud. The kind you hope to God only exists in the worst corners of true crime podcasts. My mom was 24. It was actually her birthday. She was coming home to her apartment, and two strangers, both armed with guns, dragged her into the alley behind her building. They attacked her, violently and simultaneously. She wrote about it in detail, not for shock, but because the truth is way worse when it's vague. She wrote about the concrete pressing against her back, how she remembers one of them forcing his knee into her chest so she couldn't scream, how she stared up at the sky that didn't even seem real, how the sound of traffic just beyond the alley kept playing in her ears, as if the world was still going, while she was being utterly destroyed. It made me feel sick, like physically sick. I had to stop reading halfway through and sit on the floor just to keep from throwing up. But she kept going. She wrote about how the people in her life reacted when they learned, how her new boyfriend at the time broke up with her pretty much on the spot, how friends pulled away, how even well-meaning people asked if she'd been drinking that night or what she was wearing. She wrote about how some men she used to know stopped looking her in the eye, and how others looked too long. Either way, it was like she became a different kind of woman to them, a tainted one. But even as she detailed the worst moments of her life, she did it with the same empathy she brings to everything she does. She didn't center her pain as much as she reflected on how others responded to it. She used her trauma like a mirror. Some people showed up, others vanished, and she never forgot which were which. That paper clearly wasn't written for me. It may not have been written for anyone, or maybe it was, but my mother had written it on her own terms. Maybe she was working toward one day sharing it with us when she was ready. And instead, I barged in with my assumptions and read it like it was a diary that someone left open by accident. It hurts to admit this, but I went into that paper expecting a story. Something messy and complicated, sure, but something that I could digest. I thought I knew better. I thought I was prepared. But nothing prepares you to read about your mother's body being desecrated on the same kind of night that you've spent laughing over drinks or watching TV reruns. She was younger than me. She had plans. And two monsters decided she didn't get to have a normal night again. I don't know how she survived it. Truly. I don't know how she lived through that night, let alone all the ones after it. I don't know how she became who she is. Open, kind, and trusting. How she held onto her softness after so many people gave her reasons to become cold and hard. And how she didn't pass that same fear down to us. But now, I see everything differently. The way she checks in when one of us is 5 minutes late. The way she holds a stranger's gaze in the grocery store. Not in suspicion, but out of gentle awareness. The way when I come over, the front door is unlocked. Like she refuses to live in fear. And the way she never told us. The way she never told me. She could have made that story part of our family lore. She could have used it to shape how she raised us. But she didn't. She kept it private, like that weight was hers and hers alone. And I took that from her. I've thought about telling her that I read it. I've written it out in a text a dozen times. And I've deleted it every time. Because what do I even say? Sorry I violated your privacy and now I can't look at you without crying? I don't want to make her comfort me about something she never invited me into. But I don't know how to hold this weight without saying anything. I feel like I'm carrying a piece of her story that was never mine to touch. And I'm terrified I've changed something in how I see her. Or worse, how she'll see me if she finds out. She survived something that should have broken her. And I, the stupid, selfish me, reduced it to curiosity. I thought I was being empathetic. But what I was really doing was assuming. Projecting. Reading her pain like it was part of a plot instead of a part of life. Now I know better, but I can't unread it. I can't unknow it and just give it back to her. But I can carry it with the respect that it deserves. I can stop assuming that I know the people I love just because I've known them my whole life. I can stop thinking that trauma always leaves visible scars. And most importantly, maybe I can remember what she chose to become after all of this. because what she endured was monstrous. But who she is, that's the miracle.